We can now bring in our chief foreign editor, Rob Parsons. Rob, great to see you. Talk us through the situation on the front lines as winter now approaches.
Yeah, the situation is changing, obviously, with wetter weather coming in, autumnal weather at the moment. In particular, in Kherson in the south, the report we've just seen was in Kherson, things have slowed down. The Ukrainian counteroffensive was making quite a lot of progress 2 or 3 weeks ago. It still is making progress, but much more incremental now. Part of the reason for that is heavy rains, which are typical for this time of the year there. And because the road network is not particularly well developed, that means that armour has to go across country. And when the going is very boggy like it is at the moment, that makes it very difficult to advance. That's where they are at the moment. That is the prime reason why things have slowed down. As the weather gets colder, that might start to change because the ground will become firmer again. It'll be possible for armour to advance. It will depend on just how severe a winter might be. But it doesn't necessarily mean that with the onset of winter, the fighting comes to an end. There's every chance it could accelerate. At the moment, according to the Ukrainians, the expectation is that over the next few weeks, the fighting is going to intensify. And they're talking about the most consequential battle of the war so far for Kherson. The growing expectation, we saw how optimistic the Ukrainian soldiers were in that report. Their expectation is that they could retake Kherson by the end of the year. If they do achieve that, that would be a massive turnaround, both strategically and in terms of morale as well. Russian morale would receive a very, very severe blow. Strategically, they'd be in a worse position. Their chances of ever taking Odessa, the important Ukrainian port city, would be almost completely gone. Elsewhere, the situation is slightly different in the northeast of the front, just to the east now of Kharkiv region. Again, slow progress by the Ukrainians, but they do seem to be surrounding two key towns. In the center of that front, though, the situation a little bit more in favor of the Russians. They've been hammering away at the town of Bakhmut, town of about 70,000 people before the war, for months now, without making much progress. But little by little, a few meters every day, but at enormous cost. And one has to ask, what, in strategic terms, what is the benefit? Almost certainly not very much. But in morale terms, if they were to capture Bakhmut, it would give the Russians a boost at a time where they're suffering everywhere.
Just talk us through this. In the past few days, we've had Russia who's come out and said Ukraine is planning to use a dirty bomb. Ukrainian officials have flat out denied that. Ukrainian officials even inviting IAEA inspectors to come into the country and verify everything.
Yeah, I mean, there is absolutely no proof whatsoever, no evidence that the Ukrainians have been preparing this. The defense ministers of the United States, Germany, France, UK have all dismissed the Russian claims. As you point out, the Ukrainians have invited the IAEA to come to Ukraine to look for themselves. The Russians have given up, it seems, on the West. They're now talking to the defense ministers of India and China. The Indian defense minister pretty much dismissed it, saying we're against nuclear weapons being used on either side, pretty much brushing the Russian claims aside. It's not going to go very far. But what one has to ask oneself: what are the Russians trying to do by raising this suggestion? It's pretty clear that there's no reason why the Ukrainians would use a dirty bomb militarily.
On their own territory as well.
On their own territory as well. Militarily, it gives them absolutely nothing. I think the reason is that the Russians are trying to change the narrative. They've been losing the information war, they've been losing the diplomatic war, and they've been losing the military war. If they can try and just lodge the idea into people's minds that maybe the Ukrainians are capable of doing something like this, they may hope, particularly in Asia and Africa, to begin to change the perception of Ukraine in this conflict, not so much as victim, but as aggressor in some sense. They may also, as the Ukrainians have suggested, be using this because they're thinking of doing it themselves. In the past, the Russians have accused Ukrainians of planning to do something and then taken that action themselves. That's a possibility, but at this stage, we're just guessing.
We'll see how things pan out. Thank you very much for that, Rob Parsons there.